Recently, I heard some sad news coming from one of the greatest airplane manufacturers of all time. Beechcraft, which is now owned by Textron, decided to end the production of the King Air C90. It had been in production since 1964, and it quickly proved itself to be a very popular airplane in the commercial and also general aviation market. So in this video, we're going to take a look at how the King Air C90 came to be, why it continued to be so great, and also why Beechcraft decided to pull the plug. Now, this is one of my favorite airplane origin stories, so let's get right into it. While the King Air flew in 1964, its roots date back all the way to 1947 with the advent of the Beechcraft Bonanza. Now, the Bonanza is a pure success story in its own right with over 17,000 built. The early models had the iconic V-tail and 4 seats, with later models having a stretched fuselage, 6 seats, and a conventional straight tail. And it remains in production today as the Bonanza G36. Now, I know what you're thinking. How in the world does a King Air come from a Bonanza? They look nothing alike. The Bonanza was met with great success, however, it failed to fill the market gap between it and Beechcraft's larger twin, the Model 18. Beech quickly got to work and came up with a new design. What's better than a Bonanza? Well, a Twin Bonanza, of course. The Twin Bonanza is basically what it sounds like. Beechcraft took many of the components used to build the Bonanza and created an airplane with a stretched and widened fuselage. And you can actually see where the Bonanza fuselage was basically cut in half to create the extra wide Twin Bonanza. They also gave it a new wing design, larger landing gear, and 275 horsepower Lycoming geared engines. And later models were stretched and fitted with 340 horsepower supercharged engines. Now, I absolutely love the Twin Bonanza, and I could keep talking about it for days. But let's continue on with how the airplane evolved. The Twin Bonanza was produced between 1951 and 1961 with almost 1,000 built. And in 1960, things started to get interesting. Beechcraft needed a larger fuselage but wanted to keep many components of the Twin Bonanza. From this came the Model 65 Queen Air. Using the same wing, tail surfaces, and landing gear, Beechcraft created a larger body which had up to 9 seats. The early Queen Air Model A65 even used the same 340 horsepower engines as the late Twin Bonanza, and also that beautiful straight tail. The later Queen Air Model 80 was given a swept tail, slightly larger wing, and 380 horsepower engines. And some Queen Airs underwent the Excalibur conversion, which replaced the complex geared engines with 400 horsepower, 8-cylinder Lycomings. While the Queen Air A65 set an early altitude record flying at 34,000 feet, it was still missing an important feature: pressurization. In 1965, Beechcraft introduced the Queen Air Model 88, which had a pressurized cabin which is easily identified by its round windows. The Model 88's major downfall was having a pressurized cabin while using piston engines, and with the added costs and complexity, Beechcraft only sold 47 examples of the Model 88. Now here is where the King Air came to life. Starting with the Queen Air Model 65, Beechcraft installed 550 horsepower Pratt and Whitney turboprop engines, and they did this to the non-pressurized fuselage, and it was really only used in the military. And at the same time, Beechcraft was installing turboprops into the pressurized Queen Air fuselage, and it became known, very appropriately, as the King Air. The year was 1964, and Beechcraft had finally gotten it right, and the King Air was produced all the way up to the beginning of 2021. When it was first introduced into the market, it outsold all of the other turboprops in its class, and it turned into the perfect airplane for a huge amount of applications. Not only is it comfortable and fast, but it can carry a lot. Many were adapted to skydive operations, carrying 15 people up to 18,000 feet. King Airs are used in cargo flights, mosquito control, firefighting, bush flying, military, science experiments, and of course private and charter flights. Over the years, the King Air C90 was upgraded with more powerful engines, better avionics, and also certified for heavier payloads. Small aerodynamic changes were made, and the last model, known as the C90 GTX, had winglets for a small increase in efficiency. Beechcraft also designed larger versions such as the 200 and 300 series of King Airs, and these had redesigned wings and even larger bodies for more passengers. For over 50 years, the C90 was left mostly unchanged because it's really a great airplane. But in the 1990s and mid-2000s, the aviation market started to shift into faster and more efficient aircraft. Airplanes like the TBM and Pilatus PC-12 came into the scene, and they were faster and also twice as efficient as the King Air C90. The latest C90 GTX will cruise at 270 knots, while the Pilatus PC-12 will cruise at 290 knots, and the TBM 940 will cruise at a whopping 330 knots. The main advantages the C90 has over these airplanes is its rugged airframe with those huge tires, payload capacity, and safety of a twin engine. However, if an aircraft owner wants something rugged and still kind of fast, they might choose to get something like the Kodiak 100, which has 174 knot cruise speed. Avbuyer.com has a great article comparing the operating costs of the TBM 930 versus the C90 GTX. But one thing I found kind of interesting was that the sale price of the TBM was actually higher than the King Air, costing $4.25 million versus $3.5 million. However, in the end, the TBM does come out with lower operating costs. Now let's take a look at sales. In the year 2001, 41 brand new King Air C90s were sold. In that same year, Pilatus sold 70 PC-12s and Cicada sold 33 TBM 700s. Now let's fast forward to the year 2020, only 8 C90s were sold, while Pilatus sold 82 PC-12s and 42 TBMs were sold. Also, the Kodiak 100 started growing in popularity and sold 11 copies in 2020. Another note, in 2014, Textron bought Beechcraft and also owned Cessna since 1992. And in 2015, Textron announced their new single-engine turboprop known as the Cessna Denali, which is about the same cabin size as the King Air C90. This next-generation turboprop would definitely impact the C90 sales. Also, Beechcraft still sells the King Air 260 and 360 models, which sold 20 and 34 copies in 2020. It could also be that Textron Beechcraft wants to shift focus on their larger King Air models. The fact is that the King Air started to fall into a very niche market, and the public is focused more on efficiency and speed. Honestly, I saw this coming, and I'm still sad that the end of the C90 is here. However, the good news is that over 3,000 were sold, and many of these airplanes will be flying for many decades to come. When Beechcraft gave it the name King Air, they knew they had created something great. And in my opinion, I think its reign is going to last for at least a few more decades. Thank you all for watching. Remember to like and subscribe, and until then, blue skies, and I'll see you in the next video.